It didn't arrive with drama. No storm, no spectacle, just a quiet fracture inside you. A small truth rising from a place you'd ignored too long. I can't do this anymore. That whisper marked the shift. You weren't just exhausted, you were worn thin, the kind of tired that seeps into the bones, where even hope feels like lifting something too heavy for one person to carry. You kept showing up, composed, capable, smiling enough to pass, but beneath that practiced surface, you were slipping, waiting for someone to notice you were disappearing. You tried every tool you knew. Routines, lists, gratitude, rituals. You clung to anything that promised stability. Yet some days, even the smallest task felt impossible. You weren't exaggerating. You weren't weak. You were surviving, and you hid it well. So well that no one realized how close you were to collapse. You repeated, "I'm fine," until it became a script you recited automatically. Meanwhile, inside, pieces of you were loosening, slipping, unraveling. Some nights, you silently pleaded for a shift, any shift, for proof that you mattered, for a sign that someone could see the weight you were carrying alone. You weren't falling apart, you were opening. There's a difference. One destroys, the other transforms. But in that moment, it was impossible to tell which one you were in. Pretending became too loud to bear, so you stopped, not because you lacked strength, but because honesty finally felt safer than performance. That moment, the one where you whispered, "I can't," wasn't defeat. It was the first truth you'd spoken to yourself in a long time, and truth is where rebuilding begins. You were tired of being the strong one, the unshakable one. You craved something gentler, somewhere you didn't have to hold everything together. Your surrender didn't look noble. It looked like unanswered messages and quiet tears. But somewhere in that unraveling, something inside finally sighed. Enough. You weren't searching for breakthrough anymore. You just needed rest, the kind that lets everything you've been holding finally fall to the floor. You didn't know what waited beyond this moment. You only knew you couldn't continue as you were. That clarity alone was enough to pause and breathe differently. If you've ever whispered, "I can't do this anymore," this story speaks your language. Share it. You're not dramatic. You're human, and you're not the only one who's felt this way. You didn't wake up renewed. You woke up emptied. But even emptiness has room within it, just enough space for something new to eventually settle. You allowed the quiet to linger. You didn't rush to fill it with answers. You let it exist alongside you. And somehow, that simple presence steadied you. After everything crumbled, you noticed what remained, a faint willingness to keep going. Not loudly, not quickly, just enough to continue. You didn't try to rebuild immediately. You let the dust settle. That patience became a kind of healing you hadn't known you needed. You didn't owe anyone an explanation for what broke inside you. Your experience was valid, even if it didn't make sense to anyone else. You didn't need guidance. You needed acknowledgement, someone who could simply say, "That's heavy," without trying to lighten it. You stopped trying to fix everything at once. Instead, you asked the simplest question, "Where does it hurt?" And you honored the answer. You no longer measured your healing by productivity. Some days, continuing to exist was the victory, and you allowed that to count. You whispered, "I don't know what to do." And for once, you didn't rush to solve it. You let uncertainty sit beside you like a companion, not an enemy. Your strength returned in fragments, a decent meal, a real laugh, a moment that felt unforced. Small things, but meaningful ones. You didn't chase some perfected version of yourself. You stayed with the hurting one, the one you'd abandoned for far too long. You started choosing what felt gentle right now, instead of what looked impressive later. That simplicity guided your steps. You stopped waiting for big changes. You let small reliefs matter, a lighter morning, a calmer moment. You let them count as progress. You didn't move because you were inspired. You moved because something inside nudged you quietly, and you listened. If surrender ever kept you alive, comment. You didn't give up. You finally gave yourself back. No one was meant to carry everything alone. You released the pressure to get back to who you used to be. You made room for the version of you who survived, even if survival looked imperfect. You learned peace doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, in a moment of clarity, a sip of water, a simple reminder, I'm still here. You stopped trying to earn your worth. You stepped out of a mindset that tied your value to how much you could accomplish while hurting. You showed up without the need to impress or perform. Simply being present became your act of rebellion. You didn't erase the version of you who collapsed. You honored them because they were the one brave enough to stop pretending. You shifted from harshness to understanding. You learned that compassion toward yourself is not softness, it's wisdom. You accepted that you don't need a roadmap. You trusted that when the next step appears, you'll recognize it. You stopped scolding yourself for not moving on. You replaced it with honesty. You're still healing, and that is enough. You let kindness lead, not as something you only offer others, but as something you finally began offering yourself. You realized the quiet in between moments wasn't emptiness. It was room for you to exist without pressure. You didn't need to rise dramatically. You allowed yourself to settle, to decompose what you carried, and to grow something richer from it. You released tension you didn't know you'd been holding. That release didn't weaken you. It returned you to yourself. You let things be what they were, the confusion, the pain, the unanswered questions. Not everything needed interpretation. You stopped diminishing what you'd endured. You let the truth of your story take up space, fully and unapologetically. You reclaimed gentleness as strength, choosing not to keep sacrificing yourself for situations that never protected you. You no longer performed healing. You simply lived it with honesty, intention, and no need to broadcast your progress. You didn't wait to feel ready. You chose what nourished you, steady, simple acts that supported your return. You guarded your inner world differently now, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Not everyone gets access to you anymore. You weren't always okay, but you were truthful, and that truthfulness became its own kind of resilience. You didn't become someone new. You reconnected with who you were beneath all the pretending. You chose to stay with that person. You stopped measuring progress by movement and started measuring it by how gently you treated yourself when you couldn't move at all. You didn't analyze your survival anymore. You simply stepped back into your life, slowly, fully, quietly. You now walked with a steadier strength, a grounded kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real. You lived your healing in the ordinary moments, in the way you rested, spoke to yourself, and refused to shrink anymore. You let go of the need to prove anything. Your existence itself was proof of what you overcame. You realized you weren't reaching for the light anymore. You were carrying it quietly within you. You spoke from steadiness now, from lessons earned, not wounds still open. You no longer needed pain to validate your truth. You understood you weren't falling behind. You were evolving, slowly, intentionally, at your own pace. The version of you who whispered, "I can't do this anymore," didn't disappear. They became your reminder of where the turning began. If this felt like your story, subscribe, share it. Someone out there needs to know they don't have to keep performing to be worthy. All it takes to begin again is a single honest moment.